brain, what's on your mind of how the city of Columbus or how government can be better, how we can make a difference in people's lives. And that's the reason why I got into this business. Running for office, it isn't easy. It's time away from your family, it's time away from your friends. You gotta do a lot of things that maybe aren't fun to do, like raise money. But the opportunity that you have, if you have the chance to win, to be the city council member or city council president in the 14th largest city in all of the United States, which is Columbus, Ohio, the 14th largest city in all the United States, is a tremendous honor and opportunity. And I really, pardon me, I really applaud all the leadership of the SkillsUSA team for being the stewards and leaders of your school and everything that you're doing. I think it speaks volumes to your acumen and your desire for change, your desire to make a difference. And that's why I got into business. So Columbus City Council is kind of like Congress, except we have a higher approval rating and we actually get stuff done. The mayor is like the president, except I like the mayor. I'm sorry, just throwing a little jab in there. No, hold on. But that's exactly, if you remember how a bill becomes a law. Remember that video back in the day about how a bill becomes a law? That's exactly how it works in Columbus City Council, is that Congress, like the council, approves legislation, and the mayor, like the president, is in charge of the executive branch. That means police and fire, that means roads, that means water, that means recreation and parks, and nothing happens without the other, one without the other. And that's so important for the advocacy and the position of government. And so I am the leader of the council, and there are 7 people on Columbus City Council. All of us are elected at large, meaning that we represent all 900,000 people in the city of Columbus. So when I go to run for office, I need to get 900,000 people, that's my goal, 900,000 people to vote for me as the council president, or to vote for me as a member of council. And there's a tremendous opportunity to make a difference when you have that role. As frustrating as it may be, folks come down to council. You may have saw in the news as it relates to police-community relations, folks coming down to council and very upset about the interactions and the allegations and excessive use of force by our police officers in our community. They came down to council. They have every right to do that, to complain to us and talk for 2 hours. But they have every right to do that. And we appreciate the open dialogue. So the issues that I think that are facing Columbus of what we need to do to get better are first, improving police-community relations. We got to get better in that space. And I applaud all those that are in the criminal justice track. Police officers have a tough job. Tough job. To think that you're going to go out every day to put your life on the line, to make a difference in your community, hopefully to return to your family. Policing's only become more difficult, but with that difficulty has come increased accountability. And that's where I stand, is balancing between acknowledging and working with our Columbus Division of Police to ensure that they have the tools they need to be safe, to fight crime, to return to their families and their friends, but at the same time know that there is a level of accountability that is expected from their government and their people to ensure that they do the right thing and they don't step out of bounds. Because if you think about the power that a police officer has to carry a badge, to use force, to use a gun, that's a tremendous, awesome responsibility. But with it comes the accountability to do the right thing. So we have a deficiency of trust, not just here in Columbus, but across the country, on trust between the community and law enforcement. And we see it played out every day on the national news, or on your Facebook feed, or on your Twitter feed, of allegations of use of force that may or may not have been justified. Evidence as recently as in Baltimore of an officer planting evidence on a suspect. That erodes the public trust and confidence in the criminal justice system. We have to do a better job of repairing that trust in order to make a difference in our community and make our community safer. The second is the lack of affordable housing. Rents are increasing dramatically in the city of Columbus, and you may have been subject with your family to this. We have to do a better job of raising wages, and that's why I think a school like Eastland Center is a tremendous opportunity to get into a career path that pays a living wage so that you someday can provide for your family. That's a great thing, and I really applaud you for what you're doing, because it's not an easy decision to come to a school like this sometimes. But what you're doing is a step in the right direction in order to make a great job, to get the skills that are necessary, to make a great wage, and be a contributing member of society. And that helps directly impact our problem with trying to afford rents and increasing rents in our community. You know, no one should have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. That's not the American way, and that's just not fair. So it's incumbent upon me, other elected officials, and it's incumbent upon you to promote the right policies that help raise wages, to give people an opportunity to succeed. You know, the third is our drug crisis. How many people here know someone that has an opiate problem or has been affected directly or indirectly by the opiate crisis? What's the opiate crisis? So, heroin. Yeah. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. What I like to say before we talk about the opiate crisis is drug addiction is not new. Drug addiction is not new. And it's always important to remember that, at least in my opinion, that rural communities, and I grew up in southeastern Ohio in a little town called Belpre. It's right across the river from Parkersburg, West Virginia. I went to Belpre High School. But rural communities and communities of color have been hit with a drug crisis in their communities for decades. It was crack cocaine, now it's heroin. And because the mainstream media has talked about the heroin crisis, and because of the significant addictive nature of heroin, it's become a topic of conversation to actually effectuate change. But many people, especially older African Americans and folks who live in the rural community, have stood up for decades saying, hey, we have had a drug crisis in our community and no one cared about us. We can't forget about that. We can't forget about the history of folks who have been ignored, that have bred the cycle of incarceration with mass incarceration because of drugs in communities. And now finally, we have the opportunity to build a model to address drug addiction for what it is, and that's a mental health problem. The science is overwhelming that when you start using heroin specifically, it changes the chemistry and makeup of your brain. It literally changes the makeup of your brain. So if we try to incarcerate our way out of that problem and don't give people the help they need to help change their chemistry back, and you really can't change your chemistry back, but to give them the tools to help put them in a better place. I see my my health professionals, I'm assuming that's what y'all are, wearing your scrubs, to give them the opportunity for rehabilitation. Then what do you expect of someone who has a drug addiction, that their brain craves drugs so much that they'll do anything they can to get it? Do anything they can. Include steal from their parents, include steal from their friends, include breaking into cars. Of course they're going to do everything they can to feed that addiction. It's like any other disease that you have. So we have to treat the underlying problem, otherwise we're going to expect increased crime. We're going to expect increased incarceration unless we treat that underlying reason. And that actually improves officer safety and it improves community safety. So those are some of the things that we're working on in the city of Columbus. I really appreciate all your guys' support. How many people here are 18? Now keep your hands up if you're 18. Put your hand down if you are not registered to vote. Uh-oh. Y'all got to register to vote. Kudos to you if you're registered. I cannot stress enough to you how important it is to participate in the elected process. Your voice is your vote. And it may feel like my vote doesn't count, and I know that sluggish feeling that you may get, that you feel like, well, why am I voting? It doesn't matter. The reality is that it does. In this past election, in the president's race, there were 32,000 votes spread out over 3 states that determined who the president of the United States is. And this isn't a commentary on the winner or the loser, it's just the reality that 32,000 votes. That's not a lot spread over 3 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. 32,000 votes over 3 states. I don't know the exact population of those 3 states, but my guess, it's probably 25 million. So 32,000 votes over 20 to 25 million people, you can have a direct impact on the vote and the outcome of an election, of policies that you believe in or you despise. You have every opportunity to change that narrative if you choose to accept it. So my ask to you as the council president is, if you are 18, to register to vote and to participate. And there's an election every November, by the way. It's not just every presidential year. I'm on the ballot this November. Every November, there's an election. In the odd years, so in 2017 and 2019, it's about municipal races. Who's your city council member gonna be? Who's your school board member gonna be? Who's your mayor gonna be? In the even years, it's about who your president's gonna be, who your congressperson's gonna be, who your senator's gonna be, who your governor's gonna be. And these are direct positions that can effectuate changes in all of your lives. And I hope that you realize that and you appreciate that for what it is, because someday you're going to be standing up here talking to folks that are in high school. You may have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. You may have kids, you may not. But to have the opportunity to know, like, what kind of world are we making for ourselves? Are we satisfied with what we see on TV? Are we satisfied with the policies that our government's promoting at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level? And if you're not, then you got a chance to do something about it. And if you are, you have a chance to preserve it. But that's the vote that you have to cast, and the civic mantle that you have to take up and pass on to your kids and to your friends, and be the example of wanting to vote and wanting to make a difference. So I'll wrap up here. I'll be happy to take a question or two if you all have any questions. Yes, I do referee basketball. Yes, I am a lawyer. Yes, I am in government. So be happy to talk about all 3 of those things. Yes, ma'am. On the what? I'm not sure I know what that is. Oh, the NFL players, the kneelers. Okay. So the question is, what's my political view on kneeling in the NFL? My political view is we cannot get lost on the underlying reason of why Colin Kaepernick originally started to kneel. And that was to protest injustice that he saw and he believed, racial injustice within the police department and the interaction between communities of color and the police. And if you respect the First Amendment, that means you gotta love the First Amendment for everything it's worth, the good and the bad. And the folks that believe that, and again, this is just my opinion, but the folks that believe that kneeling is disrespectful, if you love the First Amendment, then you respect the right to kneel. Okay? You don't have to agree with the kneeling, but if you love the First Amendment, you appreciate it, because that's what the First Amendment's about. It's not about commentary where everyone loves what you're saying. The First Amendment's at its best when someone's coming down to a council meeting and yelling at you for 2 hours. That's the First Amendment at its best, because that's the right that you have. So either you embrace the First Amendment and you love it, because you can't go to a cafeteria First Amendment where you pick, I want a little bit of pie, a little bit of green beans, a little bit of pork. You can't take a cafeteria approach to the First Amendment. Either you embrace it and you appreciate it for what it's worth and you love it, or you don't have necessarily an appreciation for the First Amendment, or you have a different view, but you got to take the good and the bad when it comes to the First Amendment. Yes, sir.
With the recent shootings that have been going on in major cities, how do you plan on ensuring the safety of Columbus?
So the question is, with increased crime, what are we doing about safety in the city of Columbus? A lot of the connection between safety and the community has to do with trust between the community and the police. I have talked to police officers, I have talked to community members. There are dozens of violent crimes that have been committed where, because the community does not trust the police, the community is not willing to talk to the police.